We're probably supposed to have a 2-minute statement or something. I didn't prepare anything, but
2-minute intro, 2 minutes out.
Do we think I did not think about that either.
Opening statement.
I didn't
Here's the great
prepare
thing.
anything.
You're most likely gonna go first. So.
No, we start from left to right.
Yeah, I need a couple
Closest
minutes.
to furthest away?
I was actually
Most important to least important.
Okay, all right, there we go.
I was lucky to get here on time. But prepare something.
This is fun, huh? Yes.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited. How about you?
Your ward always presents a nice turnout. So
Mhm. Well, it's
Here's the
almost
great
your
thing.
ward.
We,
almost was.
just so everyone knows, we're live right now.
What's that?
We're live right
Oh
now.
my gosh. I'm so sorry.
Oh, we're on YouTube right now.
It was Bruce.
Oh. I'll bring you another one, okay?
So I'm on 18.
Yep, I know.
Fall down because hers fell down in my yard and was covered in snow.
First was yay.
I'm sorry somebody thought to do that. That makes me kind of feel sad.
I had to do my focus.
Dang. Well, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it is. That just seems like a very petty, mean-spirited thing to do. But no, I'll just bring you another one. All right, I'm gonna write it down right now. You will have it tomorrow.
It happened before this. Well, me. I'm not doing this. I didn't take your stuff.
Why?
You want to put your sign in?
Put everyone signing in your yard. You support everyone. I love
Really
that.
till I got up here. And I found out that I didn't do that.
All right.
I'll give you your statement. You get mine.
That's fine.
We would like to welcome you all to meet the candidates night. We are the North Logan Youth Council. I'm Lydia.
I'm Rachel.
And we will be conducting this evening. We welcome our candidates, Joni Karchner, Emily Schmidt, Brad Crookston, and Bruce Lee. We will give each candidate 2 minutes to introduce themselves, and after that, we will ask questions and allow the candidates 1.5 minutes for each question. We will provide the candidates with 1 minute, 30-second, and 15-second countdown. We will alternate so each candidate can answer the question first. Each candidate will be allowed 2 minutes for conducting remarks. Joni, we'll start with you.
Lucky me. I'm Joni Karchner, and I was born and raised in Oregon. I met and married my husband, Brad, who grew up here. I am the daughter-in-law of Alan and Kay Karchner, and we have 4 children. I have been involved in politics since probably junior high, so I something I'm passionate about. I'm grateful for good people that want to run and serve, and really like doing this at a local level where it's not as contentious as the national level. So glad that all of you came and support all of us, and I appreciate being able to run with my friends. I know all 3 of these people. We're not perfect in what we do, but I will try to do my very best to represent each of you and to do my best to listen. It's not an easy job. I've been involved on the design and review committee. I've been involved with our HOAs. So I know the work and the things that happen behind the scenes. So sometimes if it feels like people aren't listening, it's great just to come up and ask us, and hopefully we can take care of you as best as we can. You're the largest group I've ever had to interview for. So I hope that I can answer the questions. And if I don't answer everything the way that maybe makes the best sense to you, reach out to me afterwards. So thanks for coming.
Oh, okay. I'm Emily Schmidt, and I grew up in the Midwest, and I was convinced by my grandpa to come to Utah State University. And in coming to Utah State, I fell in love with Cache Valley, the mountains, the people, and just the overall, overwhelming feeling of community that I have felt in Cache Valley. So when my husband and I were looking for a house, we were drawn to North Logan for how walkable the community was and how close it was to the main action of Logan, while at the same time retaining a little bit more of a rural vibe, which I very much enjoy. So during COVID, they were able to start putting the city council meetings online. And so I started watching them. And I really enjoyed watching the nitty gritty of how decisions are made and who is making those decisions. And I just kept thinking, I really want to have a say in how North Logan goes towards the future, because we are at a really pretty critical turning point in terms of where we're going to be in the next 20 years. And I want to be and represent the people here in this room and also who aren't in this room, and give the vision of North Logan that we all want to go towards the future. I'm looking at things like sustainable slow growth in terms of business and homes. I'm looking for things like diversifying the businesses that we currently have and encouraging any small businesses to continue to start. But lastly, I really want to maintain the feeling of community. I feel like I know my neighbors, and I want my neighbors to feel like they know me. We're small, and I think that can be a positive thing as people move in.
Thanks. Appreciate this time to share some of my political views and reasons I'm running for city council. I've been on city council for the last 3.5 years, and feel like we've done a lot of good things and had a lot of challenges. I've enjoyed it, and was on the planning commission for 4 or 5 years before that. I grew up in North Logan. My family's been here since the beginning of North Logan. I still live on original property that was homesteaded by my great grandfather. So I've been here a long time. I was told right before that I should tell a story, and I was trying to think of one, but all the stories I can think of, I maybe shouldn't tell everybody in the group. But when I was young, I knew all the police officers in North Logan. We were friends with them, enjoyed seeing them, and they kept an eye on us and told us not to do things like donuts down at Elk Ridge Park in the parking lot. But so what's more important is some of my political views. I consider myself a conservative very much. I'm very concerned about where we spend money, where we don't spend money. I'm a proud advocate for property rights. Everybody has rights with their property, and as an elected official, my biggest responsibility is to defend people's property, their life, their liberty, their property, and their right for truth. And I will continue to work on those as I have in the past.
Hi, my name is Bruce Lee. Usually this is where I pause for everybody to laugh. Thank you. There's always somebody that laughs, and I don't know karate. And yes, I know who he is. I've been on the city council for the last, well, it'll be 4 years in January. It's been a great opportunity to serve. My wife and I have lived in North Logan since 1996. I graduated from Utah State. I have an undergraduate degree in business and a master's degree that I've earned there. This is a great place. The reason I'm here is simply because I like to get involved. And so I'm not good at sitting on the sidelines. And when I see a problem, I don't like to look at the people that are trying to solve it and complain about them. I want to serve because I think I have some skills, some things I have to offer, and I can help. And so that's why I'm here. I hope to bring the skills I have with things like I'm a small business owner. I've worked in economic development, been with the chamber. I've done lots of different things, been on lots of different boards and committees. It helps me to look at issues and evaluate them individually and hopefully make good decisions without having some type of a special agenda. So that's why I serve.
Okay, what do you think is the most pressing issue facing North Logan City during the next 4 years, and how would you remedy it? Joni, we'll start with you.
I feel like as I've driven around our community, one concern I have that's most pressing is our water. We also have infrastructure, and I believe probably all three of us have noted that. I've lived in several different places where we've seen massive growth happen to our rural communities. I've done this 3 times now where we've lived, growing up as a child, and then also my husband and I, as we've had different moves. So I feel like we need to make sure we have those things in place, being very careful that we are careful on our taxing, and being also very careful that we don't just allow people to come in and build because there's such a demand, but to build because there's a plan in place that makes sense. So I feel like that's kind of the part where I'd like to fulfill helping in those areas.
Emily.
Okay. The one question I get asked most, I've been out knocking on people's doors, and if people stop, they want to know the growth and where we're going in the future. And that is such a great question to ask. Specifically, I feel like the city struggles a little bit on making a clear, concise plan that's really well distributed to the public. A lot of people would say something, and then when I would counter with maybe what the council had been doing, they were like, well, I had no idea. And I feel like I have come to that problem again and again, that where we really seem to struggle is demonstrating exactly where we're planning to go. So making a clear plan, but then also making very clear to everyone, using all the resources that we have to let people know what that plan is. And so I really do think a plan for the future, because right now we're in a situation where a lot of farmers are selling their land, and they have the right to sell their land. But if we don't zone it appropriately, we turn into kind of messy subdivisions, or maybe a little bit more mess in infrastructure, and people get frustrated. But if we have a clear plan in place, that it really isn't a mess and people don't seem as frustrated by it.
Thanks. Yeah, I think when you ask what the most pressing issue is, there's so many things to look at, but in all reality, it does come back to the growth. And the growth has caused all the most pressing issues. We have water. Everybody knows we were rationing water this summer. So and long before that, the city, we've been planning to upgrade our water system, and so we're moving with that. We have other utilities that are pressing, and the reality is that all comes from the growth that's happening. I can't say that I love to see all this growth. When I was a kid, there was open farmland, but as has been mentioned, property rights have to be evaluated, and people have the right to use their property, and the growth is going to continue to happen. The demand's there, particularly the residential growth. So the planning has been a big thing. In the time I was on planning commission, we basically rewrote the whole city center to try and manage some of that growth, because it was all going towards high density housing that we just didn't feel like we could support. And we still have a lot of work to do on the general plan and other items related to it. So, yeah.
Well, I think the obvious answer that everybody knows when that question's asked, especially here in Cache Valley and really in Utah in general, is growth. Clearly, we have a concern about growth. That's going to go on for the foreseeable future. And I agree with what's been said, so I'm not going to repeat it. But I want to add and say something that you might not be aware of that's happening right now. Maybe you are, is as you look around, nobody can hire. And so we're having a problem right now today with our staffing throughout the city and in our emergency services. And that's going to be a big problem, since it's going to cost money. And we're already dealing with some budgetary issues. We're not sure how we're going to come up with that. And so it's not that difficult when you start thinking about how does a city support its infrastructure, its taxes, and the other side of that is economic development. And if we don't have a good economic development plan and get some business in here, we're going to be paying more money in our taxes. And so we really need to get on that and look at that hard and figure out how we're going to increase our revenue stream so that we can take care of that problem, because that's going to come along with the growth problem as we support the growth that's going on.
Okay, do you foresee a need to bond for any projects in the next 4 years? If so, what might those projects be?
Do you mind saying that question
Yeah,
again?
sorry. Do you foresee a need to bond for any projects in the next 4 years? If so, what might those projects be? And we'll start with Emily and go to Brad, Bruce, and Joni.
That is a really, really great question. And there's not any particular issues that I see. I know bonds are mainly used for school in the county. So I do know that there has been talk of a middle school somewhere here in the north end of the valley. But again, that would be more of a county bond and something that the city wouldn't necessarily do. The only things that I can see us needing to do a bond for, and even then, I would really want to look at our budget first, is stuff to maintain and update our infrastructure, whether that means water, resources, or roads, things like that. I could see us needing to bond for.
I'm sorry, was I next? I didn't quite catch that. All right, great. Yeah, that's a great question. And if you've been through some of the city discussions, unfortunately, we may have to bond for some things. It's great. We just recently, a couple of years ago, paid off the library bond, and North Logan City is out of debt, which is actually not normal for a city, and I'd love to see it that way. With the water that I mentioned earlier, we don't have the money that would be needed to put in some of the water tanks and the wells. We hoped not to bond for them, but then there's possibilities if try to get funding from other places, but the water would be one. And then there's some sewer projects that are coming up that we kind of have a contract basically with Logan to do, and it may require some bonds there, but hopefully some other options come available, and we're searching for them. And that's my priority, is to find other ways to pay for it.
So Brad's right. Those things are coming up. We're probably going to need to bond for them, and we are out of debt, and that feels good. There's a pretty easy way to look at this. If you don't have the money you need to do a project, you start looking at the cost of capital. And had we been able to do some things maybe 4 years ago, just with construction versus what construction costs are now, we might have been better off even paying some interest to do some projects. And as we look forward into the future, that's probably going to continue. And so since we don't have the money right now, really the way to get that is to bond for it. And if we can bond at a lower interest rate, that's favorable. And so those decisions, hopefully being made sooner rather than later, are beneficial to the city, because if we wait, I think we all know interest rates aren't going down lower than they are now. So our costs are only going to go up. And so we want to make sure we use our capital resources well, which might include some debt.
I'm super proud of our city for not having that debt. So I'm grateful to those that have kept us in the clear. I do feel that sometimes there's a need for bonds. It's something that we'd have to look at, but there's also other resources. There's federal money. There's, I've helped with the Cache Valley Veterans. We had nothing when we started, but now there's a building and it's fully operating. And so there's very creative ways that we can work as a city. Sometimes it might mean that we just don't allow building. We're going to have to be really careful with that, because with building moratoriums, you can't do it necessarily for a building. I think it's like 6 months that we have, but there are water issues that we can use to slow the growth. So if we don't have the money, I was raised, if you don't have the money, then you don't spend it. So we'll just have to make sure that we're very smart going forward and utilizing the staff that we have here that have done a good job keeping us out of debt.
What city regulations do you see that need to be created or modified? Brad, we'll start with you, then Bruce, then Joni, then Emily.
What regulations do I see that need to be created or modified? As a conservative, I hope to do as little regulation as possible. So ideally, we would reduce the regulations. There's probably the obvious one is the city zoning and the whole plan for the city. As far as each zone, we've started going through them. There's a lot of work there, and it's a constant thing. There's so much zoning code. We've been working on it for the last it's kind of a continual project. The whole time I've been involved, we've been working on those zoning codes, and that's really the most pressing thing. The residential, well, even the commercial zoning. There's some zoning on the west side of the highway that I would like to see us go through that a little better than we have, and make sure we know what businesses are coming in there, and it's what we want, and it's right for the city. But that's my priority.
I agree. That's the issue that probably, if you were to sit down and look at or if you get a chance to sit down at the North Logan zoning map and really kind of study it, you'll see some areas that it looks like a little haphazard here and there, and it doesn't make sense. We have a lot of people comment when a particular project is coming in that they might not like it. How come we're letting this in or something like that? The way you stop that isn't after somebody shows up and wants to do it, because they have the right to build according to the property, the way that's zoned, and that's what the property owners get to do. And so it's on us to do that before, to look at those areas to make sure we have what we want so growth happens properly. We have done some things. I think there's more work to be done. We've met together with the planning commission. We're trying to do some things proactively so that we can better plan for what we want, so we can maintain the feel of the city in the way that we'd like to have it. If we don't do that, then somebody comes in and we don't like it and we say no, then that's a lawsuit. We can't do that. We have to fix it first. So there's a lot of work to be done there.
I totally agree with that one. I worked on a project. It took us 6 years. It was a walkable community, and it dealt with many property owners. But what I loved about it was that it made sense, and we got as much involvement from the community as we could. So what happens when you design something that the community can support, and you've got people that want to come in and spend their money in your town, instead of we just have a bunch of houses here and everybody drives to Logan to buy the things that they need. We actually created something where Hewlett Packard came in, built a small business there, but it was great because we brought in businesses that made sense around the way that people lived. We didn't put houses right on one main road where we're going to put a big, huge development with lots of traffic. So you want to think about all those little details, and then also try to keep our money here in our community instead of sending it somewhere else. So we don't want a bunch of houses. They're great, but we also need to make sure that it makes sense.
I guess I would go into, everyone has made some really great points. So I just want to kind of piggyback off of them and just mention that there is one way that we can get more people being able to rent a little bit easier, but at the same time not allow high density housing, which seems to be a big concern for people. And that would be changing a law that says that only 3 unrelated people may live in a house. And if we did that, that would make it just a little bit easier for people to have a rental and be able to afford it. Because I know housing prices right now, they're through the roof. And I truly would not want to be a first-time home buyer right now, because I do not know if I could afford anything. So that might be another thing to look into while we're doing all the zoning laws, is what are we doing to make it easier for people to be able to do what they would like with their property.
It seems there are a lot of mature people in the audience. How would you involve younger families and citizens in the electoral process? We'll start with Bruce and go to Joni, Emily, and Brad.
Well, I think we should form a youth council. It's a great question. How do you get more people that are young involved? Well, in city council meeting, we see people coming in for scout and things that they're forced to do, but it's true as far as your age group. Generally, if you get asked if you want to come to a city council meeting, the answer is, of course, yes. And how quickly can we get there? So I guess we could make it more interesting. Brad could sing. I don't know. I'm not sure the answer to that question. I guess you got me on that one.
Mine came because there was a really cute young gentleman in junior high that was very interested in politics. So I kind of thought that was cool to get involved for that reason. Sorry to be that honest, but there, I think honestly, it's talking to our youth. It's trying to invite them to some fun activities. It needs to be fun for them, because you have to think about your audience. So what's important to an older retired couple will be different from somebody that's just starting out, somebody that just wants to get into an apartment and attend Utah State. It really does take an effort from us to plan some activities that meet the age group that we're dealing with. So fun for younger ones would be probably the best way to get them involved. And being smart with your tax dollars will probably be the thing that keeps you guys from coming. So there you go.
Well, I fall into the category of somebody who has a young family. My oldest child is 6, my youngest is 1. And what got me involved in city council was easy, accessible access to the city council meetings. I've always cared about government, and there's going to be people who are 15 to people who are 95 who care about government. But if we make it easier for people to access, you're going to get people involved. So that means utilizing the North Logan Facebook page that we have. It's free, it's there. We could start posting on it more regularly. We have a resource up on campus of a whole bunch of people who are really good at social media. It'd be really great to see us pull an intern or two from there to help teach us so we can learn how to have a better presence to get more people involved. I feel like that would be a really great way to see more younger people involved. The other good thing you might want to try doing is planning meetings that are maybe more conducive to people with younger families. I'll be perfectly honest, a 5:30 meeting is always going to fall at my kids' dinner time, and it's going to be really hard for me to get there. But by allowing it to be online, it means I can listen in, I can feed my kids, and I'm not disturbing anybody in the process. So that's what I would think we could do to get more young people involved.
Thanks. Well, in the time I've been on city council and planning commission, the best way to get this room full is to announce a zoning change for high density families right next to the people you want to come, and the room will be full. So besides that, though, it's a good question, and I wish I knew the answer. We've tried to push involvement in the city a lot. We've been doing some little meet the council on the corner things, and I think it's good. I wish we could get more people there. The online stuff is great. I do think we do get more people watching the video feed, and I hope we continue to get more. A lot of the time, the stuff we do is kind of boring. It's stuff that needs to be done, especially budget time. Unless you're really involved in it, what we're talking about seems really boring. And then as far as getting the youth in, it's great to see the youth council here. Most kids can't tolerate more than about 20 minutes of this meeting, but I do bring my 11-year-old, soon to be 12-year-old, and I think we talk too much politics at home because he actually enjoys coming to the meeting and hearing what's going on. So, yeah.
With the city growing so fast, how will we deal with water needs? Joni, we'll start with you, then Emily, then Brad, then Bruce.
I think, honestly, I haven't been doing this for very long, so I don't have all the answers on what we can do as far as the water. I do know that we have some aging sewer lines. Is that correct? So there's going to be things that we're going to have to address. And fortunately, we have people that are a lot more educated on that right now than I am, but that's what I'm willing to get in there and learn and find out what we need to do. I do feel like the water is a huge issue and it's going to be expensive. So for me, it's just we better start making sure we plan right. And so it might take us some time to do it, but we need to do it right.
I completely agree with Joni. I think water is never not going to be an issue. We live in a desert, and sometimes it's easy to forget that when you're playing soccer on a really awesome grassy field. It's easy to forget, but we do. And so water will always be a concern. So for me, the idea is we come across and we say, where do we need to get our water? Where is it coming from? And how are we going to look towards the future to make sure that we still have what we need? And if that means that we're telling people, developers as they come in, we need more xeriscaping, we need more desert friendly, that's something we can do. If we're looking at fixing our sewer lines, are we making sure we're using efficient methods? Are we looking to find not just the best price, but the best way to do it because we live in a desert? I was thinking about this when I grew up in a pretty small rural town that had a lot of water issues. And it wasn't until I came out here that I realized sprinkling systems existed, because you didn't have a sprinkling system where I lived. It just rained enough that your grass grew. And so coming here, I'm realizing that we need to find the right people to do this. So we need somebody who understands Utah, who understands the high elevation desert to help us fix those things.
Thanks. Yeah, water will always continue to be a problem or a struggle. as the city grows, the water demand becomes larger on the culinary water system. Some of the things we have done recently is push new developments to have secondary water, which greatly helps houses that use culinary water to irrigate their lawn, use far more water than those who don't. So that's a big thing. Houses that are going to use culinary water to irrigate their lawn, we need to push to have more zero-scape lawns, and as we have done, and put restrictions on it. And some of these developments that don't have secondary water may not be able to be allowed unless we can come up with solutions for their lawns. Right now, we're working on some tanks, some new wells, which will always be something the city's doing. So those are just items that are going to continually have to be addressed.
Yeah, water's a big deal. It's been a big deal through history. And like Emily, I grew up in Maine, so that water came from the sky, and so we never worried about it either. But coming out here, it's a different story. Right now, the city's facing issues with infrastructure, delivery method, the piping, and the storage, and we're working on those things right now. We have active plans in place to get those done. That's really, really important. And as has been said, as development comes, you certainly can't develop past your water capacity. And so I'm listening for that every time I hear a development proposal come up, and I'm waiting to hear whether or not the water capacity is there to make sure that we can approve something like that. I think our watershed's pretty good. We need some more storage, and that's going to help. And the other thing that we've done that you probably know about, and maybe you don't like it, but we have a tiered water plan now. So the really, really heavy users are paying more for their water. Hopefully that helps us to conserve better. It's not necessarily intended to be a money maker. It's really intended to be a use controller. And so if you're using lots of water, you're going to pay a lot for it. And if you're using a reasonable amount of water, it's affordable. So those are some things that we're doing.
What is your vision for commercial areas within the city, and how do you plan to make them a more lively and better looking part of our city? We'll start with Emily and go to Brad, Bruce, and Joni.
Well, right now, I think the city has done a really great job over on 200 East of creating an environment that is very walkable, and it has some really great shops. And I have frequented them, and I like them. They've got a spot that does a little taco stand a couple of days a week. And I went to a salon down there. They're great. And I would much rather put my dollars towards North Logan businesses, because those people live in North Logan as well. So that's a big deal for me. So I really like what the city's done there. And I'd really like to see more things like that. At the same time, it would be really great to see on Main Street us encouraging and enticing bigger businesses to come. We have a lot of empty real estate on Main Street right now. And I would really like to see some of those businesses fill in. And how we entice them is definitely something I want to learn more about and make sure I fully understand, so that we're never placing a burden upon the city to pay for a business to come. So those are the things I really look forward to.
Yeah, commercial planning. When I first got put on planning commission, Four Seasons was in, and the Cove project came in right after that. All nice residential developments, higher density. That whole area, though, was zoned all the same down on 200 East. And it was gonna, in all likelihood, it was gonna turn out to be basically Four Seasons and higher density housing. So we went through and redid the zoning and worked on it quite a bit to make it more of what I think the original intent was of that zone, to try and drive more business in there, smaller shops there, is kind of the vision there. And I think we need to work towards that and make sure we maintain that zone and make things work for those who want to come into there. And then the bigger stuff, Main Street, I think we need to clean it up. We've done some zoning, some code changes to try and help the look of the street improve, some walkability, which I think is important for a lot of these, is walkability. And then, yeah, it's the the incentives are a complicated thing. I agree. We don't want to burden the citizens with incentivizing businesses. And I think we have to make sure what we do there.
Boy, I'll tell you what, this is a really important question. Just going to roll back to what I said earlier about revenue streams. We have two sustainable. We've got our taxes, we got economic development and taxes that are generated from that. As a citizen, you want economic development to happen because that means the taxes aren't coming directly out of your pocket. They're coming not from your property taxes, they're coming from sales taxes and things like that. We just got our butts handed to us by Logan. We thought we were going to have a Costco and it's going to be on 3100. I don't know if everybody knew that. We were close to that. Guess where it is? 10th West. Those things just can't happen. We've got to get better at that. And so our ability to attract commercial to the city is really, really important. If we don't do some active things, we are going to be paying for it, because every time you hit a pothole or whatever else is going on, you wonder who's paying the police department or the fire department or the city staff. It's us. And if we don't have a revenue stream that's going to be sustainable, then we're going to be paying more ourselves. That means your taxes are going up. So this is a really, really important issue that we need to figure out and solve and have a better economic development plan than we've been doing, because I'm tired of getting my butt handed to me.
I haven't had that happen yet, but I feel one of the fun things I had an opportunity to be involved in was a walkable community, and it was a great experience. I used my background, my degree is in interior design and construction management. So over and over and over, we had these test pilots and things, these research things that we'd work on. One of the neatest things I got to be a part of, though, was a walkable community. And one of my family members is the city planner for Tualatin, Oregon. So we watched a community very much like ours become walkable. And it brought in not only the talent from within the community, but it also brought in some pretty amazing businesses that help sustain that growth. So we do have the opportunity. We will have to work with UDOT, which that is an issue on its own. Main Street's 55. You go up to Smithfield and down to Logan, and then it drops. So we have an issue that's a little different than the communities around us. I'd love to work with the communities around us, because I think if we support everybody here in Cache Valley, maybe what's offered in Logan will be different than North Logan, but we work together. That networking is super important for all of us. So that's what I would work on, is mostly networking and trying to get us to be something that is different than what is around us, and that will attract the businesses here. So be a little different than what's in Nibley, a little different than what's in Logan, but it will be uniquely us.
Would you ever vote in favor of increasing taxes for North Logan residents? And if so, what would the money be earmarked for? Brad, we'll start with you, then Bruce, then Joni, then Emily.
Sure. The answer would have to be yes. I could see voting in favor of increasing taxes. I could probably go on for much longer than I have about the complexities of North Logan's property taxes and well, the whole state of Utah's property taxes, but I don't have time for that. But we tend to get less money each year unless we do what's called a property tax increase for the way the taxes are set up. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but if the money's not there to fund the police and the fire, those are the obvious ones that tend to come up. It's an increasing cost. We wish it would slow down, but we didn't have to increase taxes this year, which I was very happy that we didn't. But those are likely to be the causes, is the police and the fire. But any of these essential functions of the city, we need to provide, and if that requires us to increase taxes, we're always looking for more efficient ways to do things. But that would be the reason.
Oh, I hate increased taxes. I hate taxes just like everybody else. Once they're added, they don't go away. I watched the property tax rate go up over the years. It just makes me crazy. If you just make this really simple, and you think of a household budget and your expenses just get to be more than your income, then you have a problem. How do you fix it? Well, you can go get another job. You can change your house. You can sell things. The city's not a lot different. Our expenses are going up. We have to pay for them somehow. How are we going to do it? And so I kind of already said, that's why I think economic development, bringing business in is such a critical component to us to be able to afford to live here. And when I think about tax increases, I mean, honestly, right now, in my point in my life, if we have a tax increase, I hate it, but I probably can afford it. I worry about our fixed income population that's harder for them to afford it. And so when you add their wages aren't going up and they're not going to be able to track with tax increases. And so I think we have to be really, really careful with that and do all the work we need to do in the economic development side to try to increase that revenue line so we don't have to try to increase the other one. So, but short answer, it's possible. Yeah.
I'm one that would like to not have to increase taxes. I think there's other avenues for us. I'd like to look at, there's a federal tax redevelopment. I think we can look at those kind of, there's money out there and there's grants, there's different things that we can do. And sometimes maybe we just don't spend the money because we don't have it. Or I look at our government right now, what they want to raise our debt ceiling. I don't think that's our answer. I feel like if you don't have the money, you tighten down and you make do with what you have. If there's an emergency, then we look at some other avenues. And I totally agree with Bruce on how we do that. So I don't want to raise your taxes.
Well, I graduated from Utah State with a degree in economics. And so I answer a lot of questions like this. It depends. It depends on what we're able to do, but it really comes down to me in this. I don't just want a cop. I would like the best cop to be, policing our streets. And how do we get the best cops? We pay a competitive salary. So when it comes down to it, if we want the people who are going to be best at their jobs, we have to pay for a way that we're going to get the best candidates applying. And I mean that from the top down in our government, from the city manager all the way to, the crossing guard who's helping my kids. I want a competitive salary because when you have good people in the job, it makes a huge difference.
Why are we still paying for recycling when Logan stopped that program months ago? We'll start with Bruce and go to Joni, Emily, and Brad.
I have the same question. I don't know. And recycling doesn't come before the city council. If it did, I would, I wondered why we were paying for recycling when China stopped taking it. And so that doesn't mean I'm not in favor of recycling. I am. I think we should recycle. I think we should have a good recycling program, whatever we can do to afford that I'm in favor of, but I'm not in favor of silly programs. And so I like to see a good sustainable program.
Same. Totally the same. I do happen to know there's a few things going on in Logan, so that does have an impact on us. I like the recycling part of it, but as Americans, we're not as clean in our recycling. So there's countries out there that don't want to take our stuff. So it's an education. You start with your kids and you teach them and try to help. And my husband educates me on it all the time. I love to recycle, but I'm not recycling smart. So he has really been a great help for that. So it's an education part, and it's also working with different municipalities and other cities around us to make sure we're doing it together, because that's how we're going to make this a lot better program. If it's just us trying to do it, it's going to be too expensive.
Joni makes a really good point there. North Logan is always going to have the neighbors of Hyde Park and Logan. And it would be really great to see just a little bit more communication between them in terms of specifically regarding, we can talk about recycling, but in multiple issues, it would be really nice to have more conversations or more open venue to discuss these things. Because I do agree that we are not the cleanest or smartest recyclers here in America. And I definitely would like us to be better because, our world needs recycling. We need people who know what they're doing. And that comes in finding the right people, finding the right person to have the conversation, and finding the right solution, because it is out there. So I do see the point of not wanting to fund an unnecessary program, but I don't necessarily know if recycling is unnecessary if we do it smarter.
Admittedly, I don't have a lot to say about this topic. I don't even have a lot of information about it. as Bruce mentioned, this doesn't come before the North Logan City Council, so we don't really have any jurisdiction over it, as far as I know. But that said, it's, as you watch a lot of these, recycling it's a mandated thing. And I think it's a really good thing to recycle. The struggle is when you mandate something, people don't buy into it. And so people really need to buy into recycling. They need to love recycling and care about it and want to do what's right. 'Cause that way the correct stuff can end up in the recycle bin. And if there's a way we can help with that with city council, I'd be happy to do it.
As a council person, how would you respond to a written or oral concern brought to your attention by a concerned citizen? Joni, we'll start with you, then Emily, then Brad, then Bruce.
So I've had that opportunity with serving on the design and review committee and then going door to door. And my policy is I'll make time. So I might stop by your house if that's where you want to meet. And if that's comfortable for you, it might be a phone call. I feel like if we're not listening to each other, we won't fix the problems. And sometimes too, I've had people that are upset over things on their road. And I understand why they have that under, why they're upset about it. So you need to let them talk and vent and get the frustration out, and then reach out to the right people to say, okay, you know what? This didn't happen right on this road and they were promised this. It might have been an oversight, but it's also going to the right people. And it's not going behind each other's backs and venting and saying, did you know that this was going on? And I'm so angry about it. I feel like the best way for us to stay close as a community is to say, okay, so who's in charge of this? And then how do we fix it? And then fix it. Don't go on and on for 3-4 years of this problem that just festers, and then neighbors are against neighbor. I see that too. We've got neighbors that don't talk to each other over things that are silly, like rocks. So we want best communication is the way to fix the problem. So that's what I would do. I'm going to be very here for you.
Well, I live in this community and I walk to school every day, and you'll definitely see me if I'm walking to school with my kids. And so my thought is, I want you to not just see me as a city councilor, but also as your neighbor who you can come to, you can talk to, and you can ask a lot of questions. I feel like the more transparent we are, the more clear we are about the plans as a city, the more like people feel like they can buy into what's going on. And I know for a lot of people, me included, I felt like I've done a lot of surveys for the city, and I've asked, where is that information gone? The surveys have been varied and numbered, and if that information was more public, I think people would feel even more like they had an idea of where we were going, what we were doing, and why we're doing it. And again, if people feel like they're heard and they're understood, a lot of things can be resolved pretty quickly that way.
Yeah, I think good responses. And when people have concerns and they come talk to me, a lot of times it's just been in a matter of directing them to the right person to talk to, and trying to help get them in contact with somebody that can help them. I truthfully don't get a ton of people coming to me with concerns, but I'm always happy to talk to those who do come and see what we can do to fix it. Like I said, often it's a matter of either explaining the situation, and sometimes I have no idea about the situation until I talk to them. But that's mostly what I can do, is be somebody to talk to that can bring it back to the city council and the mayor and help to start the process of resolving it.
I actually really like to visit with people when they have a concern. As a matter of fact, I usually like to do it face to face. And so when something comes across an email or something like that, I usually invite them to have some type of a meeting, or I'll go to their house. So I've done that several times. The other thing that we've started to do, we've had 2 council on the corners. I like those. Not very many people come to them, and unless there is a specific issue or something like that going on in the neighborhood, people don't show up. But I've done that, and I think we should be accountable. And I would like to see more council on the corners or a city town meeting or something like that, where we can have a more informal discussion. One of the things I don't like about our city council meetings is, if you've ever come to them, we have a public hearing that it says, you should have talked to us before you came here tonight. So if you have a question, it should have happened yesterday. And I always think, boy, what a waste of time. I wish that we could have more dialogue and that we could talk to people about things. So I like that.
Is North Logan prepared for a major disaster, and how could we better prepare? We'll start with Emily and go to Brad, Bruce, and Joni.
This is a really great question. I was able to go to an event that they had here with the police department back in August, where they had a community emergency response. It's called CERT. And you know what? It was really great information. They have a lot of good leadership. And that, from my understanding, and I'm probably going to get corrected here, I'm pretty sure that that is done as a nonprofit, not associated with the city, or is it associated with the city? And okay, all right, great. Doesn't know either, but I just felt like those people are definitely looking forward to an emergency response, and they have the resources necessary. So if we go to the people who are best at their jobs and ask them how we can best assist them in an emergency, that's, I think, the city's best response there.
Yeah, thanks. I wish I knew the exact answer. I think it's definitely sponsored or at least supported by the city. And they just had a emergency response shakeout, I don't know, maybe only 2 weeks ago or something. And North Logan did rank really well on that. I think we might have been the top city in the valley, at least, for it. So it's a great job with staff and all the volunteers. There's a whole process. So yeah, are we prepared? I hope so. There's a lot of disasters that could happen. The best thing we can do, I think, as a city is almost more of is a community. We need to be prepared to check on our neighbors and disseminate all that information back to the emergency response facilities that we have. And we've worked on that, and we continue to work on it. There's still a lot of things that we learn each time when they have one of these shakeouts. And I think it's an important thing to keep as a priority for the city.
Well, I'd have to say, I haven't spent a lot of time studying our emergency disaster plan, so I'll just preface my comments there. I know we have one. I know more about what happens like within our church-related disaster plans. I think if we had a major disaster plans, both of those things would kick in together, and we'd see. We definitely have a plan, and I guess I would say I hope that it's adequate, but I have not researched enough to say that I know, but it's not something that's come before us either.
We had the opportunity to live in Harriman, and Harriman had 3 fires in 5 years. And we're also the one city that if some major disaster was to happen, like an earthquake, we had really great preparedness for that. And then some of it was through the church, some of it was also just volunteers. And what I loved about it was that we knew who lived around us, what their skill sets were. Here, I think we've got a great police department, our fire department. I've been super impressed with them and visiting with them. I have a concern about what's along our ridge here where the fault line is. We have a major development up there. If something were to happen, if the fire that started up, a year and a half ago, we were so fortunate to have a plane that was equipped to come in and put that fire out immediately. I grew up in Oregon where we've had major fires now. And I think it comes from having a very good plan, and that's going to take involvement from our city employees. But we need to then also, like what Emily's talked about, Facebook, Instagram, emails. If the electricity goes out, then we need to be able to work with our neighbors and have that kind of support. So I would reach out to Harriman myself if elected, and even just now, I think it's important to find out what they've done because their plan was rock tight. So I'd love to see that happen here for North Logan too.
Volunteers are a big part of North Logan's vitality. What are your thoughts on how volunteers are currently used and how to encourage and strengthen volunteer efforts? Brad, we'll start with you, then Bruce, then Joni, then Emily.
Yeah, we are lucky to live in a community where there's so many people willing to help. we actually have a lot of things in the city that we would have never had without volunteers. Elk Ridge Park was originally, the pavilion there was built with volunteers when I was very young. I remember going down there with my dad to work on the pavilion. But we've continued to do that to a certain degree. We have the volunteer day of service every year. A lot of trees have been planted with that. A lot of areas around the police station and other things have been done. And I think we need to keep doing those things. We've also been lucky in North Logan to have some of the facilities we have, which have come because of donated time and money to do them. And so I think we need to continue to encourage that and do what we can to help with it.
What a great question. I've been thinking a ton about this. I even talked to Alan about it a little while ago. I think there's an opportunity we're missing here with volunteers. This is a community that is willing to serve. And we're also a community that is struggling to keep up with our budget needs. And so somewhere in there seems to be an opportunity that we haven't quite yet tapped. We have, our days of service and things like that. It just seems to me like, where we struggle with crossing guards even, could we not have a better program in conjunction with the PTA to get more volunteer work there? We can't seem to hire. Seems like there ought to be some parents that would want to volunteer some and at least help out with that, which would help the city with some budget requirements. And even like has been mentioned, there's landscape opportunities and all those things that are I don't know, that traditionally happen already, but is there a way to have a volunteer program that could maybe even run a small, I don't know, something that would sustain something ongoing? And so I would really like to investigate that more and see that happen.
I just feel we're so lucky because I drive around, we've had these storms and all of a sudden here's 5-10 people that I watch go up and down our streets volunteering to help people clean up their yards. And so honestly, I feel like it's just getting to know our neighbor to a point where you really want to protect them. And when you build that kind of unity, then it is easy to get out there and want to go help. And we have amazing talent here, even having the university with professors and teachers. And so I've watched them get involved in things. And honestly, if they know that there's an event or a program that they can help with, I reached out. I was just networking, helping with the Cache Valley veterans, networking, calling our friends and saying, okay, here's this need. And it's pretty impressive to see people when they have the skill sets or when they have a desire, it feels good to volunteer. And so I feel that that's probably one of the best things. We've all volunteered in some capacity. So it feels good. It's great to see something that you've worked on come to fruition. And so I feel like maybe the Facebook and the Instagram, and then if people say, here's an event that we're needing volunteers for, people will know to look for that. It's getting people used to knowing where they can look to find opportunity to serve.
Creating opportunities for people to serve is one thing, but I think to really keep people coming back is we need to show appreciation for the volunteers we have. There's a lot of people who I would feel like don't realize how much good they're doing. Specifically, the people that I see on a weekly basis is the volunteers who do story time for the kids. They put in a lot of effort to make a very good program for children. And so I've made a concerted effort to thank those people and to even thank people that I think are even getting paid for their job. Because for a lot of people, knowing that they're doing a good job makes them want to keep doing it. And if they're appreciated and valued, and they know that they're appreciated and valued, they're more willing to serve again. They're more willing to put in the time and effort and their talents that we need. So thinking of ways to appreciate people. And that might be as simple as acknowledging and recognizing them online with an Instagram or Facebook post. That might be creating a way for people to put nice things about the volunteers that they've seen so that they can get that feedback that they need to want to continue to volunteer. Whatever we need to do, there are a lot of ways we can do it that I think would help increase our volunteers.
I see a lot of green lawns in North Logan during this drought, and I'm concerned that climate change won't make the situation easier in the future. Do any of you have thoughts of how to restrict water use, especially in the face of the population growth you are all anticipating? And we'll start with Bruce and go to Joni, Emily, and Brad.
Well, I think this will be an ongoing problem for the foreseeable future. And one of the things that we've done as a city that I've already mentioned is our tiered water rates. And so we can kind of control our culinary water use, or at least try to get people to help us by tiering those water rates so that as the usage goes up, that hopefully they won't use as much. And, there's some element of all of our responsibility as responsible citizens that when the state and the city comes out and says, please don't use as much water, that we all do that. And the promoting part of that from the city to make sure that message stays on top of mind so that we can do that. As far as enforcement is concerned, I don't see us going around with our police department to be water police. I don't think that's going to happen. So I think the tiered water rates is really helpful. And then as Brad mentioned, requiring secondary water for new developments is important as well.
So I have a really good friend that works down in South Jordan. She works for the Conservation Garden, and she has offered to come up here, and I'd love to get her up here. They have online videos and classes that teach people how to use our native plants. So it doesn't look like the xeriscaping where it looks like dead desert plants. They're actually beautiful, green, lush plants that do really well here. So I feel like if we can give incentives to make people use what we have that's native and cut back, you'll save money. And what she's done that's brilliant too is it shows here's a square footage of one person's lot. By taking out certain plants and reducing your lawn, putting in some rocks, you can save this much money. And so for all of us that are thinking about our budget, to be able to see, here's the example A and example B of what it's going to cost. Most of us would say, okay, it would be worth it. You're going to spend some time and money to maybe take some of those things out, but the costs pay for themselves in just a short amount of time. So it's worth it for us to think water wise. And it's worth it for us to then also have those incentives for the developers that come in. We need to be really careful about who we allow to build here, because if they're really thinking about what's going to be good 50 years from now, that's so much better than trying to fix something that just a demand right now. So we want to make sure that we have standards in place. That's one thing I really want to work on, is making sure that we have the standards before it's a done deal. So that way we're confronting it before it happens.
Along with that, Utah State is an agricultural college still. So we could utilize a lot of the resources we have here in the Valley to do a lot of those things. I know as a parent of small children, the idea of ripping out all of my grass to put in some native plants that my children would then stomp down is really not something I want to do. And I know there are a lot of people who agree with me. They like the grass because they want to run on. They want to run on it. It just feels better on your feet. So what are we doing to encourage people to look for alternative methods to grass? And there are a lot of native plants that would feel very similar to grass on your feet, that would allow you that same running around. You could throw a ball. You don't feel like you can't touch these manicured things. It also looks like, especially because water will always be an issue, what are we doing to make our parks more green? What are we doing in terms of how are we watering them? Are we doing all of the smart, wise things we can do there? Those would all be the things I'd want to look at as well.
Well, every time somebody brings up global warming, I think it might be nice if it were a little bit warmer in the winters here. We might not lose as many people down south, but some of the things we've done and some of the things we need to still keep doing. Tiered water rates have actually has been something we've implemented since I've been on city council. Bruce mentioned it too, and I feel like it's really helped. It costs the city more the more water you use. It's not normally you buy more, it goes down cheaper. That's not the case with water. We're not providing water to make money. So the more water people use, especially in July, costs the city significantly more. So we tier those rates to try and bring that down. Education has been good. Most people put more water on their lawn than they need. And the university, I don't know if the program's still going on, but was sending people out. We were sending out letters with the water bills and trying to get people to sign up to have somebody from the extension office come and look at their clock and help them to adjust their clock right. They put out little cups to collect water, and really it's a good service that we have available. So I think education is one of the big things. And it's going to be an ongoing thing to try and reduce that usage.
Any chance we can have a discussion about safer streets and sidewalks in North Logan? Joni, we'll start with you, then Emily, then Brad, then Bruce.
That is a huge concern, and some of that is on UDOT. Because there's certain streets that the traffic, the way that the developments happened, you have homes that are on a street where traffic's just going to go so fast. So I'd love to see us, before any more raw farmland gets developed, is make sure where are the cars going past? Is it going to be in the front of the home or in the back? And around the schools, do we have adequate safety as far as like fortunately, I know that we did get a street light that was put in, and that has helped significantly. So it's looking at these areas where we're going to see more traffic happen, and then plan for that as the growth continues. And then hopefully as we develop that, we say, okay, are we placing the houses right where all the traffic's going to be, or can we put the backyards to that street so that it's not something where we have to worry about where the kids and even me backing out of my own house. I mean, out of our own driveway. I feel like if we're a little bit smarter about how we put the roads in and where they go, then that's going to help us.
I really have appreciated that the city seems to be very on top of those things. I know for me, I live close to the high school, and the intersection of Wolfpack Way and 2500 North was pretty sketchy. And so to see them put in a stoplight as quickly as they did, I am very appreciative, because I was very concerned about how many high school drivers were coming out there and just how quickly it went. And I do really want to credit the city for the communication it feels like they have between the police department, between the city planner, as they try to make the decisions of where those things go to make a safer city. I do also really think one thing we need to do is enforce whatever the rule is. I know that school crossings, and I've heard some talk of the North Park school crossing has just changed the way they've done it to make it a little safer. But I do know that Greenville and North Park have had some issues with people just misremembering how they work. So it's really great that we have a police department that's been really cracking down and enforcing it, because trust me, you get a ticket once, you're not going to make that mistake again.
Yeah. I do feel like we've made some significant upgrades to our streets and intersections lately. It's been great to see those go in. The light was mentioned, and we got a stop sign on 800 East and 2500 North also, which was definitely a high risk intersection, and that seems to have helped. It's not the final solution there, and we're working on new solutions there. Some of the things, there's the safety of the pedestrians, and there's the safety of the cars, and usually the car accidents, it's a slow enough speed, it's not as significant. So I worry a lot about the foot traffic and the accidents with all the school kids going to school. And I'd like to see more sidewalks. It's obviously an expensive proposal, some of these major streets. So that's trails, sidewalks, I think is a good way that we can try to eliminate some of the hazards. 1600 East, that'd be great to see a sidewalk down there, but and we're working on some of those. It's been a discussion item.
We have this weird combination of being a new city and an old city. And it's always weird to me as I drive around and look at the sidewalk that stops in front of one house and then it doesn't continue and then it picks up. And the reason that happens, as you probably know, is because as a new home gets built, they're required to build the sidewalk. And on an existing home, then there's not going to be a sidewalk. As a person who likes to walk around, it can be frustrating, but the cost of putting those in is difficult to bear. And so I'd like to see more of that over the future. More likely than not, those will continue to come as more homes are built. And so the city does a pretty good job keeping up with the safety concerns. And I think as citizens, that's really important feedback to hear from you. If you see something, and talk to us so that we can respond. One thing that is top of mind for me right now, we've got that really cool new bike park. And it just makes me nervous that that bike park is attracting kids, and they're going to be littler kids, and they're going to drive down that road 2,500, and it's not really set up. There's no crosswalk there. We've talked about that several times in city council. I'm still pushing on that to try to get a safer situation. So as people are entering that bike park, there's so much traffic right there coming out of Elk Ridge, and I'd like to see something done more immediately there. So.
Okay, you can each have your closing statements. We'll just start with Joni.
Closing statements? Well. They gave me some time to close. I just appreciate you guys coming out, and I've loved getting to work in this community. It's been fun to be able to raise our youngest daughter here. We have loved the schools, love our neighbors, and I'd love to be able to stay here in my retirement years. I don't want to move again. And so I want to be able to serve you as best as I can. If it's in this position, great. If not, it will be in some other way to make sure that we all hopefully can encourage each other to stay involved. It's great for any of you, if you want to come up here and have the opportunity for this type of conversation, to just try this out. I think, it's always good to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and to support. So I appreciate all of you for coming out. I have really loved being able to, I know that there's some things in the community and things that maybe we're not always happy with, but I feel like we're trying. And I've really been grateful to run the campaign with these three individuals. It's been so clean and so nice. And I really do. I appreciate the good things that I'm hearing from people, and that I'd love to have more of that. We have enough negative stuff going on. So appreciate the good things that are happening here. And I'd love to continue to be a part of making sure we keep that going.
I am very invested in North Logan. And one thing I've loved is that North Logan shows up. We show up to meetings. We show up for the things that we care about. And I want to be the kind of person who is willing to learn, is willing to grow, and is willing to hear all of your concerns. I care about North Logan, and I want to make sure that you know that I care as your city councilor, and make the decisions for the best North Logan of the future.
It's always interesting to have these meetings each election cycle, and I guess I'm happy to keep serving as a council member, and my background is civil engineering. Well, I do structural engineering. It's somewhat related to the city, and all these questions were great questions and things that intrigue me and I'm interested in. I guess just the reason I'm running for city council again is I want to stay involved in politics. I've done it for a while now, and the questions were great that we answered. And my top priority really is to protect people's rights and people's property. And the city can really cause you trouble with your property. If anybody's been involved in that, it can be a real problem. And I feel like it's something that I'm dedicated to. It's when you're sworn into office, that's really what they swear you to do, is to defend the Constitution, which defends your life, your liberty, and your property. And so those are going to be my top priorities. They're going to continue to be having police and fire, things that help protect you, defending your rights on your property and your use of your property, and things that might damage your use, defending against those. And I hope to keep protecting those rights.
Well, first, thanks to the Youth Council. I don't know who's more nervous, you or me. Also for the other candidates who I appreciate, and I agree with what Joni said. I think we have a good group up here, and I appreciate people that are willing to serve. It's a little scary. I hate my signs. So I don't love that. So just don't, when you're driving around, you see those things out there, just know that I hate every single one of them. Thank you for coming. I'll say that we have some serious things. This isn't going to surprise you what I'm going to say, because I've already said it. We've got some serious issues that are coming up when it comes to our budget. And how are we going to deal with that? Growth is driving this. And if we don't have a good economic development plan and we can't figure out that side of the revenue stream, it's coming back and it's going to hit our citizens. And we don't want that. And so we have got to get on this, getting good businesses in that will help us with that side of the equation. And so I think as a small business owner, I understand how that works. I know I've worked in small business and larger businesses. And so I know what, the people that are in the decision-making roles are looking at when they're looking at communities like ours. I am a little frustrated that we're losing out to our sister communities and they're benefiting from that. That's not good for us. And I want all the other things that have been talked about. Walkable communities are great. We've got to get this, worked on, or else we're not going to be able to afford some of the things that are really important to us, that we need to and want to be able to keep. And so as you think about the things that you care about in North Logan, think about how we're going to pay for those things and keep them up, because that's really, really going to fall back on us. And so I think that's a big part of what I want to try to accomplish.
We'd like to thank all of the candidates for participating tonight and for the thoughtful answers you've been given. To conclude this evening, we are going to welcome all of the audience to come and visit with the candidates for 30 to 45 minutes. Thank you.
Thanks.
You
guys did great. That was easy.
Friends. Cheese. Cheese.